in the future. In fact, if you look at our launch rate on manifest on our website, it's growing very rapidly, and we need to make sure we can launch all of those vehicles and do so, in the right way. And so I think so we look all around the country to see what might make the best commercial orbital launch site. And we actually looked at several places in Texas, and one of the biggest factors, maybe the biggest, I think, was the willingness of the state and local governments to support such an endeavor. In other words, do they really want it? Because we want to be a place where we're truly wanted. And we actually began environmental studies on a few different locations. But I think the fundamental point that swayed SpaceX for Boca Chica was the tremendous outpouring of support from local residents.
Mr. Musk, you said that the future vision would be Mars.
Yeah.
Did you yourself see getting aboard one of your rockets or taking one of those missions to Mars?
Yeah, I'd like to fly to Mars. But I think the important thing is to develop a technology that will enable ultimately anyone to move to Mars if they really want to. So that if somebody works really hard and saves up, that they could move to Mars.
That would be very expensive. Would it be in conjunction with governments, or would it be the ultimate space tourism? How do you see that developing in a half generation or generation?
Yeah, I think it's very likely to be a joint government commercial endeavor. And in fact, as it is, NASA's kind of laying some of the very early exploratory groundwork for Mars, with the rovers and the recent MAVEN spacecraft that went into orbit around Mars. So that sort of very early precursor stuff is actually quite helpful. And then, but I think it's the critical thing though is not to. It's actually not so much about tourism, which is I'm nothing against tourism because seeing cool places is great, but the thing that's going to fundamentally affect humanity's future is: are we a multi-planet species or are we a single-planet species? And a single-planet species is much more vulnerable than a multi-planet species, because if some calamity were to happen to one planet, it could destroy civilization, maybe bring an end to humanity. Now, I should say I'm quite optimistic about. I'm an optimist by nature, obviously. Otherwise, wouldn't have gotten the rocket business otherwise. Extra optimism required for that. So I'm positive about the future of Earth. There's certain important things we need to do this century. I think we also need to work hard to minimize our carbon emissions in the oceans and atmosphere. Not bring it to zero, but just think of it like it's a bank account. We're using up the bank account, and at a certain point we won't be able to put any more carbon to the atmosphere without causing something really bad to happen.
So you under the NASA contract, are you working in conjunction with other governments, other space agencies that express interest in contracting with you to send payloads?
I'm sorry.
For example, the Japanese or the Europeans to send space.
Yeah.
To other ventures or other successful countries, how does this make for you personally?
Space, compared to say Tesla and Solar City. I think they're all really important. In terms of my day-to-day time, it's currently split about half and half between Tesla and SpaceX. And in most of my time at both companies is actually spent on engineering and design. So I think people will often see my name in the news and think, well, I must be just doing a constant media campaign. But this is not the case. Sometimes just some random tweet that I did, and it's gets tons of attention. But this feels great. It feels like the future. It feels like we're making real progress towards a future where humanity is a spacefaring civilization, and ultimately, in order for that to occur, there have to be hundreds of orbital rocket launches per year, maybe thousands, because if you think of how many launches are needed to ultimately establish a base on Mars, it's a lot of launches, particularly if you want to make it a self-sustaining base. where the key threshold is, if the resupply spaceships from Earth stopped coming, the Mars city would still be able to, wouldn't die out. That's like the key threshold that I think we want to try to reach, and that's going to require a lot of launches, and as we look ahead to the future, that's one of the things that we felt was very important, to establish an additional a launch site, and one that was optimized primarily for commercial activity. And this is not in any way a knock on Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy. That's a great spaceport that they've got there. We'll have a much better understanding of that, but my rough understanding is that we're going to do some joint research with the University of Texas on this site. So there's going to be some space-related activity with UT students and professors. I think if not permanently, semi-permanently associated right near the launch site. They're creating something called the Stargate. That's correct. So, yeah. Yeah, the students will be working on a whole series of projects. Not everything we do is Mars. I mean, in fact, most of what we do is launch satellites, resupply the space station, and in a few years we'll be transporting astronauts. But as we are able to establish a solid revenue base from commercial and government launches, that enables us to start work on Mars-related activities. So, yeah. How much time do we have? We'll just do like 5 minutes more. We've been operating up. It's been, man, we got that place in like late 2002. So it's been 12. We've been in Texas for 12 years with significant operations. So this is in a lot of ways an extension of our Texas operations. And because we're aiming for reusability, reusability is important for really having a dramatically huge effect on the cost of spaceflight. And when the rockets come back to the launch site, we would expect to refurbish and upgrade the rocket technology for future flights. So we expect to have a fairly significant engineering R&D presence at the site. And then, some of our larger rockets in the future are so big they're not going by road. So, but yeah, that would be the wise move. Yeah, exactly.